The leader of the Booner Pack. I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the f*** up, boys.
It's pumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
All right, you know the deal by now. Saturday mornings, Crunch Time Sports.
Yep.
I'm Caleb Czarnik. I'm here with Michael Gentry. Thank you all for tuning in on this fine Saturday morning. Make sure to subscribe, buy your merch, give us a like, become a member, all that good stuff. Mike, how we feeling today?
Caleb, ready for another great Saturday. Obviously, the week, few games didn't go how we wanted. We'll break that down, but I'm doing good. We got a fun show planned. We got a great guest joining later in the show, so it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, Chris Castellani will be joining at around like 10:30. We'll talk some Tigers baseball, maybe a little bit of Michigan basketball. Mike, I kind of just want to get right into it because you know what I'll say before the show we were talking a little bit. And I know some people in the chat are going to say, "Don't gamble, don't do this, don't do that." I mean, on the USA, I didn't. I put a fair amount over my usual unit on the USA. Mike, they lost. They didn't beat Canada on the championship Four Nations, but I will say this, Mike: the Four Nations was one of the coolest things I've seen for like an quote unquote, or I guess an all-star weekend type thing.
Right.
Mike, the NBA has to implement this, right?
Yeah, I mean that would especially be cool in the NBA because all the last three MVPs are all from overseas and whatnot, so they can put a really good team together. You know, Giannis, Jokic, Shai Alexander. So there's a lot of players overseas that are kind of taking over those top spots in the NBA. So that would be a very good idea for them to implement that. But yeah, no, definitely props to the NHL because just like the NBA, the All-Star weekend for the NHL has gotten really wore down and it just wasn't a good product. I mean, to have something like this where you get your best on best, especially halfway through the year, and then obviously next year you got the Olympics. So it was just an awesome job. It was awesome tournament. Obviously, we wanted the USA to win that, but either way, it was some good quality hockey.
Yeah, I know like in the NBA, they did the World versus USA usually for the Rising Stars game, but like a tournament style, something like this would be unbelievable. But I mean, I'm kind of confused what's going to happen here with is Dylan Larkin going to be able to call himself an all-star this year? Is that how it's going to work? Or I'm not really sure. We lost Mike here for a second, guys, but we're going to rock it. But yeah, it felt like the USA had some really good chances to win in that first or third period or even overtime. I feel like Austin Matthews had a lot of chances to win. You can't leave the best player in hockey wide open in the slot. I mean, you just can't do that. And like I said, I'm being a little more of a sourpuss on it because I wagered on it. I think a lot of people did. It was actually, I'm pretty sure, the most bet on hockey game ever. I know it was one of the most, or maybe was the most watched hockey game in recent memory. I mean, this was just an unbelievable job by the NHL. This is something that has to happen every year. These players cared. They played for their countries. Unbelievable idea. But one thing I did see was, and I might have got NBA Centel, if you guys know that account. I might have got Centel. I did see Dylan Larkin called out another American players saying, you know, if you're American, you got, and you're one of the better players in the league, you have to play in this. You got to put your best players on the ice from your respective country. And I like Dylan Larkin kind of doing that. Like that move. But yeah, Four Nations face-off was absolutely unbelievable. Let me know in the chat what you guys thought of it. If this is something the NBA should implement, because I personally thought it was awesome. For today, Wings are back. They play the Wild. at 12:30. Second half kicks off. Look, this is, I mean, having multiple Detroit teams in a playoff push right now, this is something special. This is something special for Detroit sports. Wish we had Mike here for this. Not sure where he went, honestly. I think his internet went out or something. He'll be back in a second. You know what? We'll move the Wings talk for when Mike gets back. Let's get into the Pistons a little bit. Yesterday, a very commanding win for the Pistons against the San Antonio Spurs. Cade Cunningham, 25-12. Jalen Duren, 21-15. And Tobias Harris, 22 points on 8 for 10 shooting. And I want to give a shout out to Tobias Harris real quick because I'm sure a lot of you in the chat have expressed your frustrations with Tobias Harris early in the year. I did. I know there was a good amount of times where I was screaming at my TV saying, I can't believe we gave this guy this amount of money. Tobias Harris in February, which is about 8 games, Pistons are 6-2 in this span, is averaging 18 points on 58% shooting from the field and 1.6 steals a game. That is what we paid him to do. Is he the best three-point shooter in the league? No. But when he gets the ball in the post on a mismatch or even guys bigger than him, he's going to find a way to get a bucket or get himself to the free throw line. And Steve O'Baby, Cade Cunningham is playing on a whole new level right now for the Pistons. Dude, he absolutely is. You're absolutely right. The game is just coming so easy to him right now. And that's the type of stuff you see out of superstars in the NBA. The game just looks so slow to him. Yeah, Coach Walker, right. I know Cade's our best player, but he's got to take care of the ball a little bit better. Yeah, 7 turnovers last night. I mean, but his usage rate is so high. So as a young guard, he's going to turn the ball over a little bit, but you would like to see that number drop. But, dude, yeah, I mean, the playoff push is absolutely real. And, you know.
Sorry about that. Had a little camera issue there.
No, we're good. Mike, we're just talking some Pistons. We'll hop back to the Wings in a sec, but I was just talking about the games that last night. Gave my apologies to Tobias Harris. Like I said, averaging 18 points on 58% shooting in February, 1.6 steals. He's been absolutely unbelievable. That's just another complimental piece. Is that even a word, Mike?
Yeah.
The word I just said? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Complimentary. Mike's kind of my dictionary here. Because I'll say words, and a lot of the time they're fake. They're not real words. So Mike's kind of here to check me.
Yeah. But we know what you mean.
Yeah, he's been that dude. He's been that secondary scorer on that starting 5. And like I said, not the best three-point shooter in the world, but he gets the ball in the post and he finds a way to either get to the line or get buckets.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of back to what Coach Walk was saying. And Mike, if you have something on this, Cade Cunningham, obviously unbelievable player.
Yeah.
But the turnovers, I mean, 7 last night. My kind of take on it, his usage rate is so high, and he's a young guard in the NBA. Like, he's going to turn the ball over a good amount. Is that where you're at, kind of?
No, yeah, and that's kind of like what we talked about early on in the year, like especially to start the season. He just looked so tired and like wore out, and then you just seen the kind of turnovers pile up. But now that you've kind of seen with Azor and obviously Dennis Schroeder, that you have more ball handlers out there. I think they kind of not like that you need to implement him off ball like all the time. You still want the ball in his hand and him making plays. But there is times I think where they can like take it down a notch, have him play off ball for a little bit. So when it comes down to those, the end of the game and whatnot and stuff like that, he's not so tired out and, you know, making those costly mistakes, turnover, stuff like that. But it's really not, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal as of now because, like you said, the ball is in his hands so much, and he's been out there. His usage rate is just through the roof. So, and hey, they're winning games. What is it, like 5 in a row now, Caleb?
Five in a row,
and
6-2 in their last 8,
all by 10+ points, I think, too.
Yeah. And I mean, I tweeted this out yesterday. You look at their upcoming games. So obviously they have this game or the last night's game, San Antonio on the road. Then they play Atlanta on the road on Sunday. Atlanta's playing better ball than I think people think. They won a couple in a row, but I think that's a very, very winnable game on the road. And then, Mike, you go, I don't know in exactly what order, but you go Clippers, Nuggets, Celtics at home, and then you end the 4-game homestand with the Nets. So if you could find a way to win 2 of those home games, you beat one of the Clippers, Nuggets, Celtics, which I think the Clippers are a good team, but I think a beatable team. I think they're all beatable teams with the way the Pistons are playing right now. So if you could end this, start the post All-Star break, winning both the road games and winning 2 of those home games, starting 4-2, Mike, you're in good shape.
Yeah, no, you're definitely in good shape. And those games, I guess you could kind of say like are measuring stick games for not like the rest of the season, but I mean just to see where you are at after the All-Star break and whatnot. So yeah, those would be huge. They're gonna need, Cade and some other guys to keep stepping up and to outlast those stars from the West, and obviously the Celtics, Jason Tatum and whatnot. So yeah, no, those games are huge. Obviously this next, I want to say it was next month in March, they play a lot of good teams and then too. So they kind of have like a gauntlet of I guess you could say playoff teams to like end the season. They don't have too many easy games. I know they're kind of sprinkled in there, but it's going to be an important, month and a half for the Pistons for sure.
Yeah. I sniff a couple, I guess the term is prove it wins or statement wins for the Pistons. Cause I think a lot of people are still on the side. They're beating up on not so competitive teams. I think you could say the Sixers are not good. You beat up on
they're winning games that they're supposed to win, Caleb.
Yeah, and I'm not complaining. Not complaining. But if you go in front of the home fans, being as hot as you are, and you go beat Denver or Boston or LA, this is such an exciting opportunity for this team. Because you could really make a statement, not only in the Eastern Conference, but to the entire league. Hey, the Pistons aren't fucking playing. They're one of those teams that if you go in a 7-game series with them, any team in the NBA, you have the chance to lose. Just the way they play. They play so physical. They play fast. They play the game the right way. I love this team, Mike. I love this team. And go ahead.
No, you go on.
I was just going to say, another player you brought up, kind of taken away from Cade's usage, Ausar Thompson. I know we talked about him a little bit last week. That is so huge. That Ausar, that they're kind of learning, okay, Ausar's going to play more on the ball and, take away from Cade a little bit. Just players like him and Tobias and all these other pieces, man. It's just so beneficial for this team.
Yeah, no, I think Tobias, even though as much as he's kind of gotten some shit over some time, we've talked about him, he's been so consistent really the past month or so. And his ability just to be a veteran in that locker room and kind of, show these guys the right way to play, right way to win and whatnot is just been huge. And like you said, he's been balling. And then we still got Malik Beasley. We better re-sign him, Caleb. We better re-sign him.
Yes.
Guys just balling, but
that video was so funny when he was on. Well, first of all, I don't like that neon guy. I'm not a fan of him. You know what I'm talking about? The video at the end of the.
I'm not really. I don't know if I could say I'm a fan or not because I haven't really watched him, but I've seen some videos, and I guess I can make my judgment off of that. Not a fan.
Yeah. Did you saw the end of the stream?
No, I did not. No,
Oh,
I saw a couple clips on Twitter of obviously him with Malik Beasley and whatnot, but no, I didn't see the whole ending thing, or maybe I did. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on YouTube, but he was all right, the stream's ending. Let's go spark up real quick. And he didn't know the stream was ended. He's like, oh shit. But yeah, Malik Beasley, you extend that man right now. When you talk about a guy in Tobias Harris, being that veteran, having that veteran leadership, I think that's, we talked about it before the trade deadline. I think that's a big reason why we didn't trade Tim Hardaway Jr. because what he brings to that locker room. I mean, obviously shooting 37% from 3, that helps, especially for a team that in years past, we saw what Cade Cunningham kind of looks like without the 3-point shooting. But I mean, yeah, even a guy, all these veterans, man. But again, we'll say it every show, Mike. Simone Fontecchio, man. Enough of the minutes, dude.
Oh, man.
Enough.
Jeff Simone's radar is going to go off. He's going to pop in the chat on vacation and just start slandering you.
Yeah, I mean,
really all the Tobias, Malik, Tim Hardaway, all those 3-and-D type build guys have just all been really what you needed. They provided the spacing, they provided the defense, they provided the veteran leadership. So those three have been really a godsend for the Pistons. Great acquisitions.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, exciting times. Exciting times. I could talk about the Pistons for hours. This is I think the most fun I've had watching a team. I mean, obviously, we got some fun with the Tigers last year. A lot of fun, actually. A playoff run. The
Yes.
Lions the past couple of years, but dude, it's hitting a little bit different because I just think I've been a fan for so long, and I know like all of us have. Everybody in the chat, you, me, and it's kind of we're laughing at everybody that jumped off the bandwagon. Because we see how good it felt. What's that little smirk for, Mike? Did you jump off the bandwagon a little bit?
Okay, with the way the Pistons were being ran for years on years, I don't think like you can really blame some people. Like you could have jumped off and then got back on when they drafted Cade, and I think a lot of Piston fans did that. But dude, there was some bad years. So if like people weren't tapped into this team, I really don't blame them. And it was the same way for the Red Wings too at a point in time too. So I'm not just slandering the Pistons, but like,
yeah, you are.
The Pistons were terrible, brutal. And hey, the Red Wings, man, you can go to some of their lineups from 5-6 years ago and you're like, holy hell, how did we actually field this roster? Like, who put this together? Like, just brutal.
Well, you could say the same thing about the Lions too, but everybody held on.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's why I think it feels so good too, like you said, watching this team and how far they've come. But like, I don't know if I blame anyone because the Pistons, from management down to the players at one point in time, were a brutal watch. So,
okay. And Boone in the chat, yeah, you can't say jump off the bandwagon, Caleb. I kind of can. I mean, I'm just saying. But again, I know it was tough times, and it's like for the Lions too. Like the reason that I stuck with this team, and I know why a lot of people stuck with this team, is because we saw what can happen, during a full turnaround, using the Lions as an example. It's just going to feel really damn good, when they make the playoffs. But Mike, you talked about the Wings a little bit.
6 seed.
5 seed.
The Pistons?
5 seed. Yes. Well, they're the 6 seed right now. We're going to we're going to be the 5 seed. Coach Walk, thank you for tuning in, man. Hope you have a great Saturday.
That was premeditated. You're still a game and a half back.
Okay, Boone, what do you mean I can't? I mean maybe jumping off the bandwagon isn't the right term, but like sticking with them, I think. And I know all of you did. I'm just saying for the people that didn't, it hits harder. Right? I would say that's because I know all of us stuck with them. Maybe jumping off the bandwagon wasn't the right term because there was no bandwagon to be on. They sucked for a long time.
Yeah.
And that goes for every Detroit sports team. But yeah, Wings play the Wild today at 12:30. Actually, Mike, before we get that, I have written down here, does Austin Matthews hate America? Missed a couple, gimmies, I feel like, in OT and the third period. That's your captain, dude. What's up with that?
To be honest, it was really disappointing. Even that game, he had 2 assists or whatever it was, 2 points. And he played a fairly good game. It's just when you're a 50 goal scorer like Austin Matthews is, the best goal scorer on Team USA, you need to put the puck in the net. You can't go the entire tournament without a goal. And even Jack Hughes too. Like those are 2 guys, Jack Eichel as well. Like those are guys that you expected to kind of be producing at a bigger clip and have more of an impact offensively and, get some goals in the net. And that didn't happen. And as far as the captain thing goes, I think everyone from Detroit, everyone from anyone who watched there knows who the real captain on that team was. And it was number 71 for the Red Wings.
Yeah.
But Dylan Larkin, I think, was probably like the biggest winner. Obviously, the USA didn't win that game or didn't win the tournament, but I think he got a lot of national attention and finally got to feel like what it was like to play competitive hockey again. And that had to feel good for him because he started on the 4th line in game 1. By the end of the tournament in OT, he was starting OT on the 1st line. So, yeah, misjudgment, I guess you could say, by the coaching staff to begin with, to have him down there, because after the first game I came on here and said, I was like, why isn't he on the power play? Like, why isn't he, like, even the line that he was on in the fourth line didn't really make sense for the type of player that Larkin is. So, but either way, I think it was a really good experience, obviously, for him and a few of the other Red Wings players. But I think playing that type of hockey, competitive hockey or whatever, is going to have him more fired up to come back and kind of reach the playoffs and just keep it rolling. So overall, awesome for him. And I think the Red Wings they're gonna come out firing today, because I know Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin, those guys are fired up from this past tournament, and Todd's gonna keep them locked in.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, Dylan Larkin getting the national attention. I think another guy that really benefited from this Four Nations is obviously Lucas Raymond, playing really good for Sweden. But, the Wings today, 12:30, play the Wild. Obviously, they were hot. They lost the game before, the All-Star break. Really hot before that. One of the hottest teams in hockey. How does a break like this kind of, as a team, you're kind of like, fuck, like, we're playing so well. I don't want to. It's kind of the same for the Pistons. It's like, I don't want to stop playing now. We're buzzing right now. Do you think they could, or how important is it for this team, especially today at 12:30, they play the Wild, to kind of start the second half off right?
No, I mean, you definitely want to pick up where they left off. And like I said, I think Dylan Larkin and these guys, I mean, Dylan Larkin is going to be playing almost five games in, I think, like 8 days. So if he he's going to play obviously Saturday and Sunday. So he's going to be playing like 5 games in 8 days. And when you see like even that type of effort out of your captain, leaving it all out there, I don't know. It's just going to be, I think it's going to be different just because of like what I've said with Dylan Larkin going there and gaining that experience, playing in that competitive hockey. I think he's going to pick the locker room right up. And obviously these guys have been fired up, and they weren't happy about losing that game to Tampa to before going into break. But I think there's a lot of teams around the league that needed this break for the opposite reason. Maybe they were losing and they needed to turn some things around. So I think it's important for the Red Wings to just maintain pace, obviously keep up the winning, but you got to come out strong. You got to come out showing the offense that you had. The special teams unit has to show up, and the defense, even the past month and a half, has just been on a different level under Todd. So they definitely have to keep that up as well.
Yeah, and I feel like this goes for kind of any sport, any team. If you're hot and then you go on a little break, like the All-Star break, for example, and you come back and you're still hot, that shows a sign of a good hockey team. And, someone said in the chat, if they make the playoffs, it's absolutely going to be earned, because what they went through in the beginning of the season, and then Todd McClellan comes in and turns things around. I know it's, for baseball, later in the season, the major league clubs kind of want to see where they're at with some of their top prospects. Is that going to happen in hockey? Are we going to see some of these top guys come up for the Wings and get some ice time?
I don't know if we'll see any of them come up to get ice time or anything like that, just because the Red Wings have been kind of in a good spot as far as really like their whole roster is going. I don't know if you would want to risk bringing one of those guys up. Even Grand Rapids are playing. Grand Rapids is one of the best teams in the AHL every single year. So it's not like they're not playing competitive and growing their game down there. So I don't think you'll see that. I'm more interested to see like what they do trade deadline. Do they go out and acquire someone? Do they, move on from a guy like Tarasenko, who got a 2-year deal with, who's easily movable? He obviously hasn't hit his stride here with us, but who's to say that he can't go do that with the Panthers again or go do that somewhere else? So I'm curious. They do have a boatload of prospects, but that they could move on from. They could package. They could do some stuff. I don't know how. I don't think like Nate Danielson or either of the goalies are going to be moved, Trey Augustine, Kosa, or anything like that. But like they do have some guys that they could package if they were trying to maybe take that Tarasenko deal to the next level. But who knows what they're going to do? They might keep Tarasenko.
Yeah, and shout out Sam Flannel in the chat. My eyes deceiving me. Did I see Coach Walk nitpick for K for turnovers, but praise Fontecchio? Hey man, I mean Fontecchio, the minutes they need to be no more minutes for Fontecchio. That's it. But before we bring on our guest, Mike,
Flannel's a goat. Love you, Flannel. Thanks for tuning in.
The GOAT. Before we bring on our guest, Mike, kind of second half predictions for the Wings. Where do you see this team ending off after 82?
In the playoffs, Caleb. In the
Yes,
playoffs.
sir.
In the
That's
playoffs.
what I love to hear.
Point
That's what I
blank
love to hear.
period. We're in there. We're in there.
That's what I love to hear. And, Detroit sports, they're different right now. And one of the best people and content creators in Detroit media, host of Chris and Company. And I'll say this, Chris Castellani, thank you for joining the show, my man.
What's going on, boys? Thanks for having me.
Chris.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on a Saturday. I know Saturdays can be a little bit tough for people, but hey,
no
man,
problem.
shows what kind of guy you are. Chris, I want to start with this. Michigan basketball, tough loss yesterday against MSU, but I never really picked a side from Michigan and Michigan State. I know as maybe a content creator, it's more fun to have that side, and I know you're a big Michigan fan.
You're doing wonders to your mental health. I'm just you're probably made the right decision, but continue.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. It's like because between Lions, Tigers, Pistons, and then having to add on another one, it's like I could not do that to myself. But Michigan is still 20-6, ranked 12th in the nation. Kind of talk about like the success of Michigan basketball and what Dusty May has brought to this program.
Yeah, it's a tough thing because expectations change throughout the season, right? And so coming into the campaign, you're talking about a group that was 8-24 a year ago, most losses in program history. And then, I think if you would have asked any Michigan fan, you're going to have an opportunity to really kind of, take control in the Big Ten standings in late February at home against Michigan State. I think every Michigan fan would have been happy with that. At the same time, expectations changed throughout the year, and last night was a disappointing loss. Look, I think that Dusty May has done a remarkable job. I think that from day one, he was given a pretty difficult task here. You're talking about a team that was a mess a season ago that lost most of their players either to the portal or guys went pro or went overseas. And he had to revamp the entire team. And he did that. He went out and got legitimate players, and not just legitimate players. Cause I think this is sometimes something we overlook. The portal is not just about like you go out and you get guys. It has to make sense, your roster construction. It's like if you're going out and getting a baseball team, you can't just get shortstops, to play the infield. You need some variety there. And I think Dusty did a great job with that. There's some issues that persist, like the turnovers. Obviously, they've struggled a little bit from the free throw line. Last night was simply just not their A game. I thought Michigan State was significantly better in the second half. I thought that MSU's depth proved to really kind of be too much for a Michigan team that's probably lacking in that department. And defensively, I felt like they wore down. But their goals are still in front of them. And either way, I kind of came into the season saying if they made the tournament, it would be a good first year. Look, they're in the tournament. They're comfortably in the tournament. They're a top 20 team right now. And there is a lot to be excited about. Obviously, disappointing loss last night against a team that I do still think, now going to Breslin will be tough. I do still think that they can play with and beat. We've seen, especially in recent history over the last few Juwan years, where it just kind of felt like, you play this thing out 100 times, Michigan would lose 100. I thought they didn't play their best game last night. I thought MSU really brought it in the second half, which is very disappointing. But as a whole, I think when you look at the overall resume, it's hard not to be impressed with what Dusty's done. And I think the administration felt that exact same way, and that's why they extended him last night.
Yeah, and Chris, you talk about the transfer portal in a little bit and wanting to bring players in that makes sense and want to play for you. And kind of speaking to that, to the Tigers, I know it's exhausting to talk about at this point. We got a spring training game today, but I just want to touch on Alex Bregman a little bit.
Yeah.
Look, I think the Tigers gave a very competitive offer, and I think that's the offer that should have gotten Alex Bregman. Realistically, I don't think any of us expected to get $40 million.
Right.
But I saw a point you made, and I was kind of on that same, train. One of the reasons I think, the Tigers maybe not scared away Alex Bregman, but what made him a little bit disinterested is Comerica Park.
Yeah.
And, the deep left center, left itself, even being deep, being 370. And, Bregman, he likes to hit to the pole side. How do you think the Tigers, in the future, if it's, if they have to do it through the draft or trading, how do you think they should approach getting elite right-handed hitters in this lineup?
It's a really good question. To me, I think it starts with, and we already saw this, it wasn't with a right-handed hitter, but you saw this with the contract extension they gave Colt Keith. I think, to me, if you know that you have guys on your roster that can hit here that are young players, you do everything you can early on to try to lock them up. long term. Because like this is just it's a thing that's existed for a long time, and we were fortunate for the longest time that they had a lot of elite hitters like Miggy and Prince Fielder and Vmar. But in general, this is not people's favorite park to hit at all. And when I saw the offer, like you said, I thought that was completely fair. As far as the future is concerned, yeah, I mean, I think money talks to a certain extent. I think the Bregman situation was bizarre because I think they gave him a very competitive offer and him getting paid $40 million a year, good player, but we're talking, I mean, that's elite money. I wouldn't have gone that far. It's an interesting dynamic. I really think offensively, and kind of what will define this tenure going forward with Scott Harris is their ability to develop bats, because he said it from the beginning, we want to develop and retain good young players. And while, you look at Bregman, who is a free agent and just signed in Boston, you look at the team that he played for his entire career up to this point, which is the Houston Astros, they developed and retained so many guys that came up through their system, whether it's Altuve, Correa, Bregman they had forever, George Springer they had forever, Yordan Alvarez. I mean, I think that's ultimately going to be kind of what defines this Tigers tenure, is the fact that I legitimately believe, and I was talking about this on the stream the other night, I think they found a cheat code with their pitching. Like, I just have so much faith in the coaching staff and the analytics department and AJ as a manager that they know how to manage their pitching. But, this is a game that's where you got to score runs. I mean, you look at the Dodgers winning it all last year, look at that lineup. I mean, not saying I expect the Tigers to compete with that, but you need 1 through 9 guys that are putting together good at bats. So I think that it will take some time here. I do believe that there will be a free agent that's going to come here in some capacity at some point. And look, I mean, it's a minor deal, but you get Glaber, who's going to hit left-handed pitching in the offseason. That's nothing to complain about. So it is an interesting dynamic. It's not as bad, but it's almost comparable to how you develop pitching in Colorado with the altitude, where pitchers just don't want to come there because the ball's going to fly and guys are going to hit a bunch of home runs. When people see that deep, kind of spacious outfield at Comerica, especially if you're a power hitter, a guy that likes to hit home runs, it can be a bit daunting.
No, and Chris, kind of just speaking more on the roster moves and whatnot, the Tigers did go out, like you said, they acquired Glaber Torres. They go out and sign Jack Flaherty, bring him back. Do you think these moves and really just the offseason in general was enough to kind of get them back to where they were last year? Or do you think they should have still went out and acquired another bat, even though you lost out on the Alex Bregman sweepstakes and whatnot? Do you think this roster is enough to get back to, playoff baseball here?
It could be. And that's kind of the weird part of this, is that there is absolutely a future in which I can see this team not just making the playoffs, but winning the American League Central. I still feel like they did not do enough in 25 in this offseason to address the biggest issue, which is adding power bats and mainly right-handed bats. I brought up Glaber. That's fine. Glaber's not really a power hitter anymore. He was in that 1 year when the balls were juiced. It's a much different time, much different park. He's in a much different place in his career. I felt like last season they got on this historical run, and so much of it was based around the fact that they were night in and night out dominating on the mound. I mean, whether it was Skubal starting or the bullpen days, the pitching chaos, it really was remarkable. I don't think that kind of success is sustainable over 162. Now, I say this, but I have kind of gone, with the best case scenario. What happens if we see the steps forward taken by Justin Henry Malloy? What happens if we see a full great season of Parker Meadows? What happens if Colt Keith takes that next step and Carey stays healthy for the entire season? Then we are talking about a team that's probably the favorite to win the American League Central. I look at the roster right now with the amount of young players they have, and it mimics something I've said for a while, which is I think long-term, this organization is in a really good place right now. I think they're going to continue to develop. I think they're going to continue to bring in the right people. I think the learning curve on some of these young players is not going to be nearly as steep as it was during the Avila era. But at the same time, I do still think there's a lot of question marks offensively. So it's a mixed bag for me. I look at the roster. They absolutely can, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this ball club. This is the first time really in a decade that I've come into the season legitimately thinking, yeah, you know what? They have a shot to win the Central. They can win the Central. But I do think right now, when you look at how young the roster is and how inexperienced a lot of these guys are at the big league level, I totally understand any Tiger fan having some questions and feeling like they maybe didn't do enough in the offseason.
Yeah, and Chris, when you talk about the success of the Tigers, you brought up a couple of these names. I think there's a lot of X factors on this team. Like if a Parker Midos plays well, if a Justin Henry Malloy can come off the bench and hit left-handed pitching for this team. But there's a pitcher this year that I'm really looking at. Reese Olson obviously had a fantastic year last year. I think he's maybe the biggest X factor in this rotation. Obviously, last year was phenomenal. I think it was May, had like a 2 ERA, was almost unhittable. One of the best sliders in baseball, a great sinker. I'm hoping we see a little more velo on that fastball, but kind of what are your expectations and projections of Reese Olson and that number 3 spot in that rotation?
Yeah, he's a very good pitcher who has the potential to be great. What is interesting about Reese, and I think that the organization and Chris Fetter deserve a ton of credit for that, is that when you look back at that trade and people go, you traded Daniel Norris and you got Reese Olson back? Like, what a steal. Well, the reason for that was they picked up on the fact that Olson had an elite slider, an elite spin rate on his slider in the minor leagues. And I think when you look at where he's been successful at the big league level, it's been getting that slider as a swing and miss pitch. Where he struggled at points is the fact that his fastball, you brought up the velo. The velo is on the 4-seamer is about, is above league average, but that pitch gets hit a fair amount. I think the Tigers have done a really good job of masking that over the last year and a half in which he's been in Detroit. But when you look at the velo that he has, when you look at the plus stuff that he has, you get the impression that that's a pitch that can really improve. And if it does, we are talking about a guy who can be a front of the rotation guy. And even if he's not, I mean, right now you're looking at him as a 3. We saw him pitch with ace caliber stuff at points a year ago. I mean, you brought it up. The first 2 months of the season, he was essentially unhittable, dealt with a few injury issues. So yeah, no, I think he's a huge X factor because he was another guy. They had this incredible run with a year ago late, and because he was kind of coming back from injury, wasn't a huge part of it. But people do forget those first 2 months of the season, like, he was, in terms of run prevention, the advanced numbers might have told a different story, but in terms of run prevention was like on par with what Skubal was doing. So I think that, they feel very confident with his ability as a pitcher. I remember there was a point last year where he really started to struggle and he bounced back with a few really good starts. He strikes me as a guy that's really willing to listen. And most of all, I think he does the number one thing that, you need to do on a staff where Chris Fetter is your pitching coach. The guy pounds the zone. He throws strikes. And when you do that with the stuff that he has, he's going to have the potential to be really successful.
Yeah, and Chris, Caleb kind of talked about it already. Spring trading underway. We got a game today.
Yeah.
Who is just one guy that you are looking for to have a big spring and obviously carry that on into the regular season? Is there just one guy that you've had your eye on, like this guy needs to have a big spring?
Man, it's such an obvious answer, but it's the truth. It's Torkelson. It's because right now, I was talking about this literally months ago. I said Torkelson has basically gotten off to a terrible start in every season of every level of professional baseball he's been in. Like whether it's starting from high A ball all the way to AAA, whether it's spring training, major leagues, what have you. And so now he's at this point where he's lost his starting job. Cole Keith is going to be this team's starting first baseman, right? But I think the Tigers have handled this well in the sense that you got to earn your way onto a roster spot. So the funniest thing ever would be after 4 years of like stinking it up, he has a crazy hot spring and AJ has to make a decision about whether or not he makes the roster. All eyes will kind of be on him because you really get the impression, even with some of the rhetoric the organization's put out there and some of the things they said, like they're kind of on their last legs with him. Like he really needs to produce this year or else there's going to be a lot of frustration. He might not be a part of this organization for long. Beyond that, one guy that I'm looking at, and you mentioned him earlier, is Justin Henry Malloy, because I think that guys like him and Jace Young, but I'll go with Jahan especially. He was called up last year in June, and I think in the second half of the season, there was this expectation of, look, we want to just see developmental at-bats. We want to see this guy coming along, getting better, developing a better knowledge of the strike zone. And then all of a sudden, you find yourselves in the middle of a playoff chase, and kind of you have to adjust your expectations. This is still a guy with a really good minor league numbers, really good thump in his bat. And, it's very small sample size, but got better as the year went along and was actually 6 for 8 in the postseason. Like he was kind of raking a little bit. I think that I brought up the lack of potential power in this lineup and the lack of run production, but I think what AJ hopes for is that a Carey Jahan platoon with Carey going against righties and Jahan going against lefties, that you put those guys together, you get a 35 home run, 100 RBI guy between the two of them. You can potentially have a lot of success there. So I think those two young guys are guys to look out for.
Yeah, Chris, dude, could you imagine this lineup if Torque was the guy we
know.
thought he was going to be, if he
I
was
know.
the Paul Goldschmidt bat in the middle of this order, this would totally change the outlook of this entire lineup. And that's why, like, I don't even know. Like, this is just such an, like you said, it's such an important month, this spring training. And it sucks because, you know, baseball, even the best hitters in the league, they can go on a month slump. So if
Yeah.
Torkelson, you know, starts spring, not great. There's really no room for him on this roster because you see Jahan getting, like you said, getting reps at first base. You see, you know, Cole Keith, he's going to be the first full-time first baseman. I don't know. I'm look, he's the first overall pick. I'm still going to try to hold on to some hope, but
you have
to
to.
the point.
I do think organizationally, like, they no longer look at him through that lens of like of the hype and everything. Now it's just like we need a productive player. Like, it doesn't, whatever hopes you might have had of future all-star, superstar, 40 home run guy, that's fine. You just got to find a way to hit your way onto the roster. And that's the one thing I said. I hope, and I don't know, maybe it's just not there. I hope this lights a fire under him somewhat because let's be honest. And I like Colt Keith, and Colt Keith wasn't anything special at second. It probably could have been average maybe at some point. But Colt Keith could have thrown every ground ball that was hit to second base into the third row last year and would still be playing second base if Spencer Torkelson could hit. Like, that was meant to be Torkelson's position and role on the team. And because he struggled, like, you end up moving Colt to first, where I think he'll be fine. But now you look at where kind of the offense stands. A lot of it is dependent on whether or not he can find himself again. Yeah,
and you see Torque, he went down to the minors last year, came back up, and look, I'm no hitting coach, but just from what I saw, there wasn't much changed. You know, I think no. I don't want to say, because I know he made the comments about, you know, the batting cage, and I think people are questioning like his willingness to learn. But a guy that did go down to the minors last year and totally changed his swing, shortened it up, was really worried about, you know, contact and hitting the ball into the gaps. Parker Meadows. Absolutely. Chris, I am so high on this guy. I think he's.
There is, sorry to cut you off, but I like Parker a lot too. So I figured I think there is a future where Parker Meadows, in terms of overall value, is the best player on this team. Like, I think that when you look at what he can do defensively, he has the makings of a 5-tool player. And what's interesting, it's so funny what people would say when he was in the minors is like, man, this guy can kind of do everything except for consistently hit. People are like, when he gets on base, he steals bases. He's got a great arm in the outfield. He can run balls down in center, but he's just not consistent enough with the bat. And I'm glad you brought that up. Like, they completely revamped and shortened his swing when he was sent down to the minors last year. And, you know, I hate to make the comp because I am very high on Parker, but I do think that, you know, stubbornness is potentially one thing that's held Torkelson back, is the fact that I think there's this belief of like, my swing will play, my swing will dominate every level. This baseball humbles you, man. I mean, there's guys who have dominated every level of baseball they've played at that get to the big leagues and they can't figure it out. I think that Parker's ability and his willingness to kind of shorten things up, he became more of a contact guy. Now, he still let off games with home runs and doubles. And the fact is, he's one of those guys where he puts a ball in play, there's a chance it's going to be extra bases just because of his speed. So I think that one thing the Tigers have severely lacked, really, man, it's been probably since Ian Kinsler, quite frankly, is a legitimate guy that can put pressure on pitchers at the top of that lineup. And when you look at the really good teams in Major League Baseball, some of these guys that they have leading off, you know, I remember he's terrible now, but like those few years where the White Sox had Tim Anderson, and it was every single game they were starting against us with a double or a home run and just putting the pressure on the pitchers. I think it's been a long time since the Tigers have had that. And when you look at what Parker Meadows can do making contact with the ball, but even more so with the new rules and what he can do stealing bags, I think that's a weapon that a lot of other teams are probably going to overlook because they're going to be focused on the Riley Greens and the Kerry Carpenters of the world. This guy can be a weapon.
Yeah, and Chris, I seen Rando bringing up in the chat. He said, don't sleep on Mize. I just want to kind of double back on him. What are your expectations for a guy like Casey Mize, and could he possibly be that fifth starter? And if he's not going to be, who do you expect to kind of take that spot?
Yeah, so the Cobb injury kind of puts a wrench into things because it felt like they had their 4. Now it's down to 3. Look, there's a shot that Mize finds his spot it finds that 5th spot in the rotation. I think a lot of things are going to have to happen for him that we haven't seen over the last several years. Because I think, you know, the word that I've kind of been using that I've taken from other people is pitchability and kind of ceiling. And we're at a point now. Casey Mize was drafted 7 years ago. So we can't really be looking at this guy similar to Torque the way that we once did of, oh, he's got this wipeout splitter. He's got this devastating stuff. Like, you just have to compare him to the other pitchers in the organization. And the fact is, if you're going, this guy didn't miss many bats last year. He did not strike many guys out at all. I mean, he was a brutal, low strikeout rate, which is only acceptable if you're consistently throwing strikes and getting inducing weak contact. He wasn't really doing that either. So I think that when you look at some of the other guys in the system, whether it's Ty Madden, whether it's Cater Montero, I think that they've all shown, in small sample sizes, admittedly, an ability to miss bats that Mize maybe hasn't shown. I talked to Cody Stavenhagen about this in the offseason, and he kind of made it seem like the best course of action for Mize in the future might be in that long relief role where he can kind of air out that fastball a little bit. But the big thing with him, and it's going to be the big question mark until he finds it, if he ever does, is the fact that when he was drafted, all we heard about was how good this splitter of his was and how it was going to be a wipeout pitch that was going to be an elite pitch. And now it's reached a point where, there was going to be some adjustment, but that's almost an unusable pitch for him when you look at the data. Like, when he throws it, it's not particularly successful. Every so often you'll see what it can be, but for the most part, it's been ineffective. Unless he finds that pitch kind of magically here in spring training, I think the calling might be the bullpen. At the same time, I'm going to go kind of glass half full here with the optimism. I think this is the first time in a long time where the depth in terms of pitching is exactly where it needs to be. There's going to be injuries. There's already been one with Cobb. And I think the fact that you might have a guy like Mize in the bullpen or Manning in the bullpen or even in the minors, I think is a good sign. As far as the rest of the rotation, yeah, look, you got your big three. That's, how that's going to fill out. I wish I had a better answer for you. I just think spring will determine a lot regarding Jackson Jobe. I think that it's very clear Jobe's stuff is major league ready. Yeah. But you are talking about a guy whose career high in innings is only 90 something. So his innings will be monitored. So do you start him on the major league roster and then monitor his innings later? Do you start him on the minor league roster and monitor his innings early on? I'm really not sure. I do think that he will be a key piece of this team regardless, whether it's in the early part of the season, middle part of the season, what have you. And then I don't know. I've liked Cater Montero. I liked what we saw from him in points a season ago. Maeda, much to people's chagrin, will have a shot at this. I prefer him kind of in that long relief role, but there's a lot of names to keep in mind. Like, I really think that AJ is going to be very open to just whoever pitches the best in spring, though they have those three guys kind of locked up with Skubal, Flaherty, and Olsen.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, Jackson Jobe, he's a specimen.
He's a freak.
He's disgusting.
It's ridiculous stuff, and I think I don't want to jump too far ahead necessarily, but like, I know that there are some concerns here about what the future might have in store about retaining some of our star pitchers. And it's like, what he becomes over the next few years could alleviate a lot of that stress regarding what the future might have in store. And that's tough because, Cy Young winners and Cy Young caliber pitchers don't grow on trees, but at the same time, you look at a guy who was taken out of high school. I haven't met a single person who hasn't said anything other than like, yeah, he is that good. So it'll take, and he was thrust into a pretty difficult position last year, coming out of the bullpen really late in the season, making his major league debut. I think we're going to get him kind of fully unleashed this year. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Chris, I got one more for you. I think a lot of people are talking about the third base platoon, like what that's going to look like if it's Fearling, Young, and then, a guy like Andy Ibanez. Yeah. But, a position I'm really interested in, I think a lot of people are, is the shortstop position. Yeah. The platoon with obviously Trey Sweeney, who we picked up at the trade deadline last year, who made a lot of, who had a lot of key hits for the Tigers last year and made a bunch of incredible plays at shortstop. And then obviously Javi Baez. Kind of what's your expectation for that platoon?
Look, Sweeney's going to have a role in this and should. And I think that as a whole, Trey Sweeney will do nothing spectacular as a major league player, but will probably be one of those guys who you're going to look at one day and be like, well, he played in the league for a long time. Like, he's very fundamental. He can hit for power. You put him near the bottom of the lineup, he's going to do some good things. I was talking about this on my other show this week, just trying to figure out when is enough going to be enough with Javier Baez, because the thing is that the general belief seems to be well, you can platoon him with Sweeney and he'll go up against lefties. Well, he didn't hit lefties last year either. So, I mean, I don't really know unless there is some resurgence, which, and I try to be as optimistic as possible. It ain't happening, guys. I mean, this is basically for Javi we're talking about a guy who was the worst hitter, in terms of OPS in baseball a year ago. That means for the team to be done with him, quote unquote, he's going to have to be worse than that, which is not out of the realm of possibility. I think that there's a future here with a third base situation I think works itself out. And even last season, whether it was Vierling's emergence or calling up Young, like it ended up being fine and working out fine. This is a situation where I think that they will go into the season with the best of intentions. And either Sweeney is thrust into a position where he has to be the everyday shortstop, which I don't know how sustainable that is. Or you just reach a point with Javi where you have to finally make the decision of like, yeah, man, you got to cut ties. I don't see it. And not to mention, like, even if he was productive, even if he was a similar version or even a lighter version of the Javi Baez we saw when he was in Chicago, he just had major hip surgery. Like now he's reaching a point where I just feel like his body is kind of betraying him beyond just all the stuff that we complain about with, lack of knowledge of the strike zone, lack of hard contact. So I'm not feeling super optimistic about that spot right now. I think there are certain platoon situations that I have more optimism about. A lot of people are kind of ignoring the catcher situation as well. Like we saw very little from Dylan Dingler last year. They still believe in him. Same with Jake, but this is one of those circumstances where I just feel like it's not the best juju. It's like the last remaining piece of the Avila era still kind of holding on. And look, if he surprises us, God bless him. I hope he helps the team. But I think that at some point, I don't know when, but at some point, a hard decision is going to have to be made with that.
Yeah, well, I hate to be that guy, but I don't see many surprises out of Javi Baez.
No, I think generally speaking, the fan base. I remember, I think last year getting asked the same thing, like if he was, if there's any hope, and I'm like, guys, if there was hope, he would have turn things around in his second season, like with us. It's just not there. And now, like, all the complaints we have, and there's, hour-long video compilations of him chasing pitches that are like, 3 feet off the plate. But at the same time, I actually think at this point, I just think his ability's gone. Like, I think his body's worn down. I just don't really think he has it anymore. Because what is bizarre, and the eye test might deceive people, he's actually lowered his strikeout rate over the last few years. Like, I'm not saying he's adjusted, but that just means that he's easier to pitch to now. Like, he's just not capable of making hard contact, a lot of pop flies, a lot of ground balls. He's just not a particularly effective hitter at this point in his career. And I don't see him lasting a whole lot longer. Yeah.
Well, Chris, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on. Obviously you guys watch, Chris and Company, and I'll say this, and then I believe you have all your content on CastellaniContent.com.
Yeah, if you want to find everything that me and my producer, Austin Sisler, we've been working really hard over the last year to put stuff out. Everything that you want to find, like, for instance, I do the Michigan basketball post games. If you want to find all of them from first game, get caught up. It's all on one page there, like perfectly organized. So somebody much more talented than I put that website together, and I appreciate them doing that, but we're able to update it all the time. So yeah, if you guys could support us on those platforms, it'd mean a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thanks again, Chris.
Of course. I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks a lot.
Guy.
Yep. Peace out.
My guy.
What a guy.
Yeah,
Knows his ball.
Awesome. He's awesome.
Knows his ball. Got some comments here. Who's pitching today, Caleb? Shout out Chandler. Kenta Maeda. So, you know how that stuff goes. But I mean,
welcome back, baseball.
Yeah, welcome back, baseball. First Tigers baseball we get to watch all year, Kenta Maeda. But, Mike, I'll say this. People are saying he's throwing 92, 93 in his bullpens. I'm just saying, Mike.
Yeah. I mean.
No, he's no good.
He's
not good.
Yeah. I mean, if it was anything like Kenta Maeda last year, starting off on the mound, they might open up with 2 homers back-to-back. So, who knows? We'll see how it translates.
Shout out Doc in the chat. Good morning, Doc.
Doc.
But yeah, I mean, let's look at this lineup today, Mike. Obviously it's a spring training lineup, so it's nothing too crazy.
It's a makeshift lineup.
Yeah, let me pull it up right here. Some notable names in this lineup. Parker Meadows leading off, Andy Ibanez hitting second, Zach McKinstry, Justin Henry Malloy, Spencer Torkelson, Bly Madris, Jemiah Jones in left field, Ryan Kreidler at shortstop, and Brian Servin at catcher. So yeah, I mean,
the
not the
upper
greatest game
half of that lineup, the first 5 at bats, you definitely want to see some stuff out of those guys. So be interesting. We got Malloy and Cork back to back.
Yeah, and off the bench you got, like I was looking at the lineup card. I know you got Lorenzo off the bench, Hao-Yu Lee off the bench. Reg Wilkins in the chat, give me a pick. Listen, man, I'm a cold better right now. They call me Iceman because I'm just not winning many bets right now. Any thoughts on NASCAR this weekend? Boone? No. If I'm going to be quite honest, but I will say, Boone did give me a winning pick. He actually gave me a top 10 pick. William Byron won outright. So shout out Boone.
Boom.
I will say this, Mike, did you watch any of the Daytona 500?
No, I did not.
That last maybe 2 laps was electric. I will say it was electric.
Yeah, I don't know. What were we doing at that time? Because I remember we were talking to Boone and something else was on. I don't know.
The All-Star game.
Oh, yeah.
Had to watch Cade represent. But,
yeah.
dude, and look, I hope, we get a chance as Crunch Time to go to Michigan International Speedway. I think that'd be really fun. So cool. I'm not going to sit here and dog NASCAR and racing because I think it's a cool sport. I think it's a cool environment. But just call me when there's 5 laps left.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I can't tune in from, I don't even know how long a NASCAR race lasts. Boone, you could tell us. But beginning 10, that's a lot. Maybe the last 10 laps I'll tap in, but I don't know.
Boone, to wrap us up here, can you just give us a sneak peek pick? Just something for the chat. Give the Saturday chat, the faithfuls, a little sneak peek at what your pick is tomorrow because I'm going to ride it. I'm going to ride. Pause. But I'll take it. It's something that is it's definitely, and last week was the discussion, like Boone said, they have a massive fan base. I will still stand on it. I don't think the fan base is massive, but I think it's a cool fan base. And I think it's a big fan base. I think it's big, dude. It's big. It's a big fan base. Massive. I don't want to disrespect them again, but I don't know if it's massive. It's definitely a niche. But Mike,
I think they probably do have a pretty big, massive fan base. I just think it's hard to really tell, camera wise. And I think they do a lot of stuff before, before and after. But, yeah, I don't know. Not my niche.
Dante 151 rock with the Pistons money line against the Hawks. This is starting to make me angry because I love betting on the Detroit Pistons. I even bet on them last year. There was so much value, guys, and now they're 6 and 7 point favorites in these games. It's getting a little scary to bet on my favorite team, man. And you can't take money line because, against Atlanta, they're going to be what? What do you if I was a bookmaker right now, I would set that line at minus
looking at
3.5. That's what I'd set the line at, minus 3.5. Atlanta playing a little bit better. They always play Detroit close. If it's minus 3.5,
to be honest, I think it's probably more than that.
I don't know, dude. Because I think Vegas is expecting a letdown game maybe from Detroit. That's just my guess. I could see minus 3.5. On the road, a team that with basically the same roster, no Jalen Johnson. Who else did they trade at the deadline?
DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah, no DeAndre Hunter. This is a team that beat the Pistons, so it's going to be a good game. But if that line's minus 1.5, I'm going to take that money line. But there's some spreads for the Pistons. It just gets a little bit too much. But hold on, Boone. One last thing. Take Wisconsin and Iowa State plus 12.5 this morning. I'm on that, brother. And then I saw another one in the chat. I'll try to find it before we wrap it up. Reg Wilkes gave us a pick. I forgot what it was, but it was Vanderbilt minus 1.5. But Mike, anything else for the people this fine Saturday?
Nope. Red Wings getting a W at 12:30. Tap in. So,
yes, sir.
On that,
yes, sir. That's about
it. Saturday. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Till next week.
Peace.
Peace.